Howdy y'all, TheJTJ here with Roll to Wound. We're going over Soulblight Gravelords Tactics, Legion of Blood. Hi, I'm JTJ, I'm here with Chris, and we'll be covering the Legion of Blood today. Every Legion or Dynasty has basically two battle traits that they gain and sort of buffs or benefits that they give out sort of army-wide or whatever will have the keyword in your army list. So for the first one that Legion of Blood gets, it's called Immortal Majesty. If an enemy unit fails a battle shock test within 3 inches of any friendly Legion of Blood vampire unit, add D3 to the number of models that flee. I think this is a nice bonus. It could pay big dividends with elite units. If you're playing something with a multi-wound, really costly enemy unit, and an extra D3 models running, that's a big benefit. And I always think about it like this: there's so many times that the enemy's rolling battle shock, and I'm just like, man, if you would have just lost one more model, 2 more models, I'd take that point. The key thing to take away here is that it is a vampire unit. So Blood Knights, first thing that came to mind, Vargas.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, though, is you'll get to it in a minute, the favored retainers, which really wants you to play a lot of death rattle stuff. And so it seems like these kind of contradict each other a little bit, because I see Legion of Blood, you want to take a lot of skeletons and zombies to get one of your other battle traits, but then this one, you have to have your vampires. So it is a little weird, but like you said, it can be good if battle shock happens. With anything that we're talking about, 3.0 could change opinions if you get a lot more command points. Then Inspiring Presence may change. I don't know. I've heard a rumor that possibly Inspiring Presence could be only issued from your general in 3.0. And some armies are getting more generals. So I don't know. I mean, it could be good, could be bad. Right now, I think it's okay.
All right, next one's up. So favorite retainers, Chris.
Yeah, so favored retainers. This is same terminology from Legion of Blood of past, but significantly different. So this go around, it's ignoring the negative modifiers to hit and wound on rolls attacks made with melee weapons for friendly Legion of Blood Death Rattle units wholly within 12 inches of a friendly Legion of Blood vampire unit, or wholly within 18 inches of a friendly Legion of Blood vampire hero that is the general. So the cool thing is your Blood Knights can actually give this. That's kind of cool. So maybe that kind of works in tandem with the Immortal Majesty, where they have to be near a vampire. So if your vampires are supporting, or your Blood Knights are supporting some Death Rattle, then you can maybe get both use. Interesting note, though, is Favor Retainers doesn't affect zombies at all. So your Dead Walker stuff, direwolves and zombies won't get this. So you definitely lean heavy into skeletons with this battle trait.
The first thing that I always see is that, anytime that I'm seeing negative ones to hit and wounds are huge in second edition. And when I see something that can negate that, that can negate you giving me a negative, I say this is a big deal. There's plenty of things in the game. It was funny. I put a post out saying, "Hey guys, what are all the things that give negative modifiers out there?" And some of the big ones are the fiends, the gets, the Geminids, and stuff like that. It will be interesting to see how this interacts in third edition. So,
one thing I do want to say about that, though, is so when you look at your death rattle units in the army, you have skeletons, which are not offensive. They're your defensive kind of to soak up some damage and regenerate. Black Knights, which are pretty garbage. And so really, to get the most out of this is your Grave Guard, which I also think is one of the best units in this book. But something to be cognizant of when you first see that. You're like, oh, all death rattle. But then when you really nail down to it, there's only like one death rattle unit that's actually offensive and doing damage.
well, you could run it with Blood Knights and a White King on Steed when they FAQ their command ability.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, But yeah, that was something that came to mind. I was like, well, I guess if at first I was like Blood Knights with Black Knights, I'm like that doesn't make sense. But Blood Knights with White King, sort of maybe flanking or moving or sort of as your hammer unit, it could be interesting. I graded this out as a B. It's not bad, but it does restrict what gets the benefit of it. It's the traits themselves are not bad, but you have to build your army fully around to use these.
Yeah, the other thing though is it's a lot of moving parts here. So like the favored retainers, your death rat will get it, but they only get it if they're near a vampire unit. So it's not just like a passive. They get it in this legion. They have to get it if you have vampires near them, and so you still like have to be cognizant of your placement of things to make sure you're within your ranges. It's not just a passive. You always get it bonus. So definitely something you have to be careful of before of measuring out and pre-measuring all that.
Yeah. And the other thing of note here is that Black Knights are battle line, so they are sort of, it seems like you would want to run either, to make these benefits work, Blood Knights with some Black Knights nearby or a White King on Steed, or possibly, it'd be really awesome if we had a vampire on a horse or some sort. That'd be kind of cool, but.
Yep.
All right, moving right along into command traits. So most of all the legions but one in the book will get 6 command traits that are just for this legion. And remember, you cannot put these on a named character, so you're having to put them on sort of your generic heroes. And the first one is premeditated violence. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by this general is 6, that attack scores 2 hits on the target instead of 1. Make a wound and save roll for each. So basically, you get exploding 6s.
Yeah, and obviously command traits and artifacts don't affect your mounts. However, an interesting thing is the Vengorian Lord, all of those weapon profiles, none of those are counted as a mount. So you could have exploding 6s on his talons that do d6 damage. That's kind of cool. There's a little like gimmicks because when you first look at his war scroll, you just assume, right? Just anything like, okay, he's got his sword. That's the rider, and then the other things are counted as mounts, so they won't get affected by other things. But this is like one of the rare exceptions that you see, like a monster or a big thing, that the whole weapon profile could technically be affected by a command trait or an artifact.
I think, yeah, and that's a great point you bring up. My first thought was a vampire lord on zombie dragon. Uh, you're only getting it off of his attacks, but it's still, you can spike those hits. It's pretty nice. I'm giving it a B minus just because it is, like you're saying, doesn't work for the mount. If it did work for the mount, it would be like, yeah, I'll try to do that with the the sword like claws on the
Yep.
on the vampire dragon. But as it sits, I'm sort of okay. It's cool. It's not bad. It's just not something that I automatically would take that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the next one is the Soul Crushing Contempt, and this is the subtract 1 from Bravery characteristic of enemy units while within 3 inches of this general. So, I mean, there's definitely better ones. The one thing to say about this is if you're going to try any sort of Bravery bomb in this book, it's going to be Legion of Blood, and you can use this command trait and maybe try to trigger your Immortal Majesty, but I don't know. It's not very good. It's a C plus at best command trait, and there's definitely better things to take, in my opinion. You can build around it if you want in the book, because you have different things debuffing, and if you want other stuff, you can to focus down the debuffing. Yeah, that's fine, but just Battle Shock just seems to be such a small part of the game now, with people just auto passing or not having to take it in OBR's case. So I don't think you will see this a whole lot, really.
Yeah, like I said, if you had multiple command traits, this would be maybe the third one you would stick on somebody. And I do agree with trying to build around a debuff type Battle Shock debuff type build in here. I wouldn't do it. You're best going with like Night Haunt or something like that. The next command trait is Aristocracy of Blood. You can reroll charge rolls for friendly Legion of Blood units while they are wholly within 12 of this general. Giving out rerolls to charge is super good. Like, it's one of those things where if you see that, people build whole armies around that, and having that ability is so nice, because there's so many times you fail even like a 4-inch charge, and you're like, dude, if I could just make that charge, the game would have totally changed. There are several ways in the book to get added charge distance and pile in. This works hand in hand with those. So like you have your zombies that have that extra 6-inch pile in. You have some of the Blood Knights abilities, and it's just sort of like getting those off is super important in my mind. Getting those charges off. So.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is you can build around it. I've been looking at building a Vicros list because there's also a command trait that's reroll charges, although interestingly, it's wholly within 9. So a little worse than this. But the idea essentially is you have your grave sites to pop stuff up out of the ground. You can have Vargeist deep striking in, other things like that. So if you really wanted to try to have an alpha strike list, maybe put some cogs in your list, then you have this general get up the board real fast with pinions, and then all of a sudden you got, in this case, wholly within 12, re-roll all your charges. So I think there's play to it, and I think it's a good one. So it's definitely an A tier command trait, I would say. So moving to the next one is my personal favorite, is the Aura of Dark Majesty. The subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target the general. So the main contender, right, is Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, but you can put it on obviously anything else that you want to be survivable. But the idea is something that wants to get into the enemy and sit there, and just that is a nice passive thing. It's not a once per game. It's not doesn't really. It's simple. It's simple, clean, and easy to use. I think it's probably one of the best ones for Legion of Blood, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's in my opinion, it's one of the best ones in the book because it is simple. It's not funny business. There's no tricks. There's no orders. There's no roles to get this, which we see a lot in here. It's straight up. And yeah, you want this on your whatever. If you have a frontline fighter, somebody that wants to get in there and mash it up, this is a great one to have on it. Moving on to the next one, which is Walking Death. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by this general is 6, that attack inflicts a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the weapon used for the attack, and the attack sequence ends. Do not make a save roll. So this one is spiking your wound rolls, and you're fishing for 6s. It's swingy. I think about it on the zombie dragon, and I'm thinking about sometimes like it's not bad. It's just you're still
I think
fishing for them 6s.
I think it would be. I mean, I think it would be a lot better if it was on the unmodified hit roll, because you still have to get through your hits, and armies have minuses to hits. So, like, you got to get through all that crap just to get to your wound roll. So, yeah, I agree with you. Like, and even if it was unmodified 6s 2-hit, there's still some other better ones. Aura of Dark Majesty being the main one, but I don't know. I mean, it's all right.
Yeah, and there's probably somewhere in this book where somebody would say, "Hey, I want to throw that on something," and it might work really well. But then again, I still look at the zombie dragon because it's still a D6, so you still have to roll that. You would not get a flat 6. It would be, and if you get a flat 6 for some reason, like that would be great. But then you're rolling the D's, so the D6, so you might end up with 1 mortal wound anyway.
Actually, well, because it's equal to the damage characteristic of your weapon, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah, you're right. I'm not a big fan of it, personally, but anyways, so the next one, the Seguin Blur, friendly units start pile and move wholly within 12 inches of this general can move an extra 3 inches. So, doesn't mean if they're outside of 3, they can be elected, right, to pile in. So like, I think you're basically getting an extra 3 inches if they're in melee. But I think one of the tricky things and sneaky things you can do is the zombies already have a 6-inch pile in. Now they can have a 9-inch pile in, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's over twice their normal speed. So, like, the zombies have ways to move in this book, but if you take a 40 block of zombies, a 9-inch pile in probably gets a good chunk of them in on 25 mil bases. So the point I was going to make is like I don't think it's the best one in the Legion of Blood, but I do think it could see some play, and I do think it would see some shenanigans possibly in some lists.
Yeah, and the reason I was thinking A+ on it is because it number one, friendly units that start a pile and move wholly within 12 of this general, it works on self too.
Yep.
So if you're whatever you are, yours. I keep going to. You'll hear me say 1,000 times during these reviews. If you're a zombie, vampire lord on zombie dragon, you're getting an extra 3 inches, massive. So that's a 6-inch. That actually can let you jump models. Like you can jump a line of models sometimes. Just depending if they have a small screen, you can pop right to the backside at times, or at least pop around to the edge. I love what I think you could do with zombies in this. The one thing I would caution with that is it seems like everything in this book has 12-inch bubbles, 9-inch bubbles. When your zombies get a 9-inch pile in, they're more than likely going to be out of some bubbles. So you're gonna have to just watch how that does. But you think about a 9-inch pile in too. A lot of times it can grab objectives. It can threaten other objectives. It can pile enough guys in, like, oh, I barely made this charge just with one model, but now my whole unit gets 9-inch movement. I can get everybody on that point. So I do think that it's a good one, and I think it works. The cool thing about it is I think it will work for either a backline general or a frontline general. So either way you want to run it.
Yeah. Like you're saying about the objectives, most people, especially with most war scrolls right now, are conditioned that almost every unit in the game, with a few exceptions, only piles in 3 inches. We've seen a few in the Slanesh book, and then in this with the zombies that get these extra pile-ins. So I don't know if that's a sign of things to come, but you can definitely catch someone sleeping, thinking like, oh, well, my screen is just enough in front of the objective. He's not going to be able to pile in. Oh, well, if things are piling in 6 or 9 inches in zombies, you're a lot of people I think are going to be caught off guard by that early on playing against Gravelords. They're not going to expect that much distance. Okay, so
just run down the command trait tactics a little bit. This is sort of my bullet points. When building your list, use aristocracy of blood to help with your charges. Could be good to pop units out of the grave and try for long charges. Cogs would help this. Aura of Dark Majesty is very good to put on your frontline fighters. I personally think Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. However, you could put it on a Bloodseeker Pelican because that's kind of wants to be up front. Keep it alive a little bit longer if you're going that route. Sanguine Blur is one of the best unit buffs in the book. Has incredible tactical possibilities. Depending on the build, I would take Aura or Blur. Just like whatever you want your general to be and what you're trying to do, I would be looking at those two.
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to repeat my favorites because you basically listed all my favorites. But I'll point out that what's cool is the command traits in Legion of Blood. A lot of them are actually usable depending on how you want to build. So there's nothing. Yeah, I mean, the Aura of Dark Majesty stands out as kind of the top contender, but realistically, it's not like there's just that one and then the other 5 are really, really bad. So I'd like to see that. I like to see the internal balance where you can see different scenarios to use them.
All right, we're going to move on to the artifacts of power. If you want to start us off with the Ring of Dominion.
Yeah, the Ring of Dominion. So each time the bearer is picked to fight in the combat phase, you can pick one enemy model within 3 inches of the bearer. Roll a dice. On a 5+, pick one of that model's melee weapons, and it suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to that damage characteristic of the melee weapon picked. You cannot pick the melee weapon that refers to a damage table or ability that determines the damage, so like a D3 or D6. Um, if the odds were better, I'd say it would be an interesting artifact, but you have a 33% chance that it does anything. So, I think that's a pretty crummy artifact, and a C ranking probably is maybe generous. I can see like you can make some funny situations happen, and it's maybe more of a beer and pretzels artifact, but it's not a competitive artifact by any means.
Well, I guess the only reason that it would be interesting is if you do put it on something that's beefy maybe, and you run up on one of those big centerpiece like an Archeon or like like a Gargant or something with a huge or a Durthu with his flat six, and you do get it off. You can basically kill them or take them half wounds down with their own weapons. So that mechanic is so interesting, but you need a 5-up to do it. I agree. You can't depend on it. Moving on to number 2, a shade. Shade glass decanter. After armies have been set up, but before the first battle round begins, you can pick one enemy hero on the battlefield in your hero phase. If the bearer and that hero are on the battlefield, you can roll a dice. If the roll is equal to or greater than the number of current battle round, that hero suffers 1 mortal wound. So if you think about it, you're technically not even guaranteed 1 wound. I put 1, but you're not even technically guaranteed 1, because if, say, you didn't deep strike your gentleman or something all game, or he never did, or whatever it is. But really, realistically, for the roll wise, you're only guaranteed 1. So if we both start on the board at the same time, that first battle round, I roll a dice, I roll a 1, he takes a wound. But then we go to round 2, um, there's no guarantee. So I don't like it. I don't like that you guys have to, but everybody has to be on the board, and it has to be a roll each time that gets harder as the game goes by.
Yeah, and I don't like things that I consider plinking damage, where you just do one or two wounds a phase, because a lot of armies now have ways to heal or mitigate damage or ignore some stuff, and so a lot of it is spiking damage. In my opinion, is the way to go, and so just by this, it's like, okay, 1 wound, maybe your hero phase. So it's not very good. I don't think so. Better ones out here. Which number 3? So Orb of Enchantment. So once per battle. So it's another one of these you only get to use it once. At the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy hero within 3 inches of the bearer and roll dice. On a 3+, that hero cannot be picked to fight in the combat phase. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost certain that the old version of this was guarantee, or it was a 2+. It was it was a once per game thing, but it was almost a guarantee you can shut a hero down. Because I remember running this a few times, and it's solid.
Were you talking about the realm artifact before they took that away at the GHB? Or are you talking about
No, no,
in?
no. I'm talking about Legions of Nagash had something similar to this.
Because it was the realm artifact, and the name escape. I keep wanting to say Griff Feather Charm. I don't think that's it. It's the cloak of something. And that one used to be auto, or it used to be every turn. Then they took it away and made it once per game. And then of course they took all the artifacts away. My big issue with this is going back to once per battle or a 3+. If this was every turn on a 3+, you would see a lot of people trying to take it, because that's massive. If you see it once per battle, it needs to be auto, because why would I take it and then that I'm going to roll that 2 every game and right at the most critical moment? I just, my opinion, it needs to be one or the other.
So yeah, okay. So here I just for kicks pulled out the old Legions of Nagash Battletome here. In the old Orb of Enchantment, it was a guarantee once per battle. You can just shut down an enemy hero within 3 inches of the bearer. Now it goes from a guarantee to a 66% chance of working. Like, if it's a once per battle, make it a guarantee or a 2+. I don't anything that is up to a dice roll is not a big fan of mine personally. So Unfortunately, this went from a really cool artifact to one that I don't think is very good, and maybe a C rating at best.
Yep. Moving on to Soulbound Garments. Add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target the bearer. Yay!
You don't have to roll dice. It's not once per game.
Oh, and it's not once per game. It's not, hey, roll a dice every, Um, 2 plus Vangorian Lords, Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, Vampire Lords, White Kings, like all those. And the one thing that we really haven't touched on this is that a lot of the saves got better in this book for a lot of those heroes. They used to be 4-ups in a lot of situations. Now they're all 3-ups. So with this, it makes them a 2-up save. And there's still a lot, there's still things in the book that allow them to re-roll those ones. We'll see what the new maybe command traits and stuff and abilities are in third edition, but this is just a solid artifact across the board.
Well, and that's supplemented by the fact that it's in Legion of Blood, which is Neferata. Neferata's spell allows you to ignore negative modifiers. You can still have positive modifiers, so you can have a 2+ zombie dragon that can't be rended. Now, that's a lot of points with Neferata and a zombie dragon, but just that's pretty scary if you don't have mortal wound output.
Well, that used to be the standard, like before the all the artifacts went away. That was how you would run your zombie dragon. It was an ethereal zombie dragon. So
Yeah, it's kind of back a little bit. Okay, so the Obulate Arcana. Once per enemy hero phase, when an enemy wizard successfully casts a spell within 18 inches of the bearer of the spell and is not unbound, even if the friendly wizard has attempted to unbind it, before resolving the effects of that spell, you can roll a dice, and on a 5+, that spell is unbound. So, first time I read this, I was like, eh. Second time I read this, I'm thinking this actually is not that bad, because it's not a once per game. It's once per hero phase type deal, but it effectively gives you 2 chances to unbind an enemy spell, because it says you can still attempt to unbind the spell, and then if you fail, you can activate this artifact, and then on a 5-up, so a 33% chance, it automatically gets unbound. And so I'm thinking about Croak or other casters that have really high pluses to cast. So if he gets a spell off on a 10, you're like, oh man, I gotta unbind on 11+. Statistically, you're actually better off just rolling the single dice and using that. So I think it's not the best artifact in this, but it's one of these things where if you take a battalion and you get another artifact slot, I could see it being your second artifact potentially, depending on how you want to build it. The only downside is it's only usable within 18 inches. So if you try to put it on a weak little hero that's 30-inch, for normal unbind range, then you can't use this. So you got to kind of like factor in this has a shorter range. So I think overall it's actually pretty decent. It's probably like a B rating artifact. Not going to be your first pick in the book, but it's a strong contender, I'd say, for a second out of the Legion of Blood's artifact list.
yeah, I agree. If you have an extra necro and you had an extra artifact, there's nothing wrong with putting it on there, because it will cancel out. You can, before resolving the effects of that spell, you can roll a dice on a 5. That spell is unbound. So unless their wording says this spell can't be unbound, and there's a couple out there that have that ability that say that, but that's pretty good. So especially like spells that get forced through. You're looking at some of the Zinc stuff where it's forcing spells, like the spell pretty much went off, and some of them allow you to unbind and some won't. So it's an interesting artifact. The last artifact we have is the Amulet of Screams. Once per battle, when an enemy wizard successfully casts a spell that is not unbound, you can say that the bearer will use their Amulet of Screams. If you do so, the wizard suffers D3 mortal wounds after the effect of that spell have been resolved. Once per game again. D3 mortals to an enemy wizard when they successfully cast a spell. So my issue is the once per game. I would rather do something like, yeah, this is going back to, this is one case I'd rather have. Hey, give us some of those rolls. Hey, every time pick an enemy wizard, every time they cast a spell on a 6-up, they take a mortal wound, or a 5-up, they take 1 mortal wound. It's just once per game, they get D3. Make it a flat 3, or make it D6. I don't know. Give me something here. And the other thing is too, if you run into there's a lot of builds that people don't even run any magic. So I'm taking this on my guy, and I show up to the game. Oh, I don't have any casters. Well, you just wasted your slot on this too. So I'm not a fan of at all of this. But
Yeah, it's kind of weird. You just kind of see a lot of the once per game in the book, and usually when you see something that's once per game, it's because it's like pretty strong. Like you understand, like, okay, if this was every turn or something, that would be overpowered. But these things, a lot in the Soulblight Gravelords book, the once per game stuff really isn't that strong. Even if it was once per hero phase, you still might be like, there's better stuff. So it's kind of weird.
yeah, I will say that this could possibly be interesting if, oh, I got that wizard got down to a wound or something, and you're like, oh, they cast a spell, boom, I'm going to hit it. But just aligning all this stuff to make it worthwhile, I think, is a little.
Yeah, for sure. So, just kind of summarizing the artifacts, the obvious standout is the Soulbound Garments. That, again, no dice rolls. It's passive. It's just there. You get +1 to your save. And that's for missile and melee weapons. So, I've seen some stuff in this book that your guy gets buffed when he's in melee, or when he's being attacked by a melee weapon. But this is just straight up +1 save. So, that's very strong. You can put it on any hero that's not named and make them better. So the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, like you said, is the obvious one, but other things as well are great candidates. And then the Obulate Arcana, like I had mentioned, I think is a fantastic runner-up or strong contender for your second artifact slot. Really helps you. If there's one spell the enemy really depends on, a teleport or something that just does a ton of wounds. What is it? The Lord of Change, the named guy. Does the flat. Yeah, does flat 6 mortal wounds. So like this gives you a fighting chance to at least unbind one critical thing. So I think those are your two that you're going to see most frequently out of this Legion.
Yeah, and mine is Soulbound Garments, hands down. 95% of the time, you see somebody running Legion of Blood, you can say, "Oh, who's got your plus armor save?" You just say, point to the one with the plus armor save, because that's what it's going to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so this one, we want to cover some combos and what we would think pretty much for all of these, all this series of videos. And for this one, it's pretty easy for me because it's going to be Soulbound Garments and pairing with Aura of Dark Majesty. It will make your combat hero very, very tanky. Add in Dark Mist from Neferata and or Fading Vigor or Decrepify, and it will extremely hard to wound a hero in close combat. Like, you think about it, if you put a -1 to hit and a +1 armor save on your dragon, and they have any other buffs coming out from the army helping, you're not going to be able to hurt them in melee. You're going to have to use magic. You're going to have to use ranged.
Yeah, or mortal wounds. But yeah, for sure. And I'm kind of the same same opinion of you on the combos. I think that's the go-to. It's pretty obvious to me. Outside of real niche builds where you might use a different artifact or command trait, but I think Aura of Dark Majesty paired with Soulbound Garments, that's your go-to. If you're to pick up this book, this army you've never really played before, that's your default for sure.
All right, at the end of these, I'm going to introduce, and guys, this is early on list building. This isn't supposed to be power combos. This isn't supposed to be stuff that, you can take this to the weekend's tournament and you're going to win. This is, hey, I'm looking at this Legion, and let me, just to crack it, let me build a list around some of this stuff and see what I could do. See if I can make a competent list, sort of taking in the battle traits in mind. And of course, I'd start with the general being a vampire lord on zombie dragon, Aura of Dark Majesty, soulbound garments in the spell. I would give him pinions. Neferata with Decreptify as her spell. I would put some Black Knights, 15 Black Knights. Even though they're garbage, like I said, building around this, they are battle line in this. Maybe you could put them with either your general or your other hero to run and get the bonuses. Death Rattle Skeletons, 230 blocks, and a 20 block of Grave Guard. So just taking all those Death Rattle and trying to make them useful. An alternative is to drop Neferata and take the Death March to lower the drops. So it works. You can play with the points there, and it would lower your to a 2-drop.
Yeah, I think those are good options. One thing I was just thinking about as you're reading this, obviously we've been discussing 3.0. There's the rumors that they're capping the pluses and minuses to 1, essentially. So you can't stack buffs or debuffs. But hypothetically, if that doesn't change and it stays like 2.0, if you really wanted to build an annoying list, you could have... So Neferata's command ability is aura of -1 to hit with melee weapons. And then if you want to throw out the Gymnids, that's another -1 to hit. You just have that right there. And then you can just run a list based around that. But if you really want it to be annoying, if you also had a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon that was -1 to hit, it's very possible to get him a -3 to hit in melee. So obviously that requires you going full in on that strategy, and it may backfire on you, especially if the enemy has a ton of mortal wound potential or can kind of stay out of your ranges. And you'd probably be a little light on bodies because Neferata and the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon are about 900-ish points. So that's almost 50% of your army right there. But maybe those two and a ton of skeletons could make for a very annoying list. Skeletons that are now minuses to hit and getting back up if they get killed in melee. So there's some interesting things. I think you can make a real tanking build out of the Legion of Blood.
Yeah, I think so as well, and really, I'm taking it. It's almost like I'm almost taking it just to get the Aura of Dark Majesty Soulbound Garment combo. If I knew I was running a Zombie Dragon, because I'm still working on how viable Death Rattle is right now. I'm not. Don't let me sit here and say that you should never take Death Rattle. I think it has a place, but to actually really see how viable that 4+ get up is, and how much the Grave Guard are actually going to do for offensive potential. But I could honestly see, hey, I'm just going to take a bunch of zombies. I don't care about the battle traits, and I'm going to put my Vampire Lord and basically make him unkillable and let him do his thing. I
So that's kind of following up what you just said. So that's the thing is, looking at the command trait and artifact, I think if I had the option to put that in any other Legion or Dynasty, I would then always play that over Legion of Blood. Because like for my playstyle personally and how I want to play this book, I would only go Legion of Blood to beef up my Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. I don't care about all that other stuff, but that's personal opinion. But that's for me, that's the annoying thing. I'm like, oh man, some of the best command trait artifact combo in this book for a big Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon is in a Legion I don't want to play. So it's annoying, but at least, I mean, like we said, there's ways you could really build up around that Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, or you can play a lot into the Death Rattle, and you don't have to handcuff yourself to those two, or to that combo of command trait and artifacts. So overall, I think the Legion of Blood is pretty solid. Yeah, definitely wouldn't not take it. Wouldn't be an auto not take. I think it has build, so. Well, that's all we got for the Legion of Blood. Please follow us for our next video, which will be covering the Legion of Night. Thanks for watching. Y'all be good.